Alright, so I'm going to try and give a little bit of an intro to this, even though nobody's in here right now, but this is also just mostly for when it goes up on YouTube. I'm trying something a little different. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an intro before I actually start, because pretty much mostly I realize it's just me sitting here being awkward while I set everything up. Which, I mean, apparently some of you like this because it's getting more views on YouTube than it is on the actual podcast. So, ta-da, apparently. Yeah, I'm just going to set up here. I had to go through and get rid of the ones that I do not, because we are doing a Fright Day today. Fright Day Friday. I can't remember how to work things, apparently. Clicking on the wrong stuff here. Okay. So these on up. Because I have permission for that one. Okay. Yeah, I've got enough for today. I was partially worried that I didn't have enough stories for today. Also, I'm trying a little bit different of lights. Not sure. I think I've... Whoops. I don't know if I like it. I think it's... Alexa, turn living room lights down, please, to 25%. Okay, there we go. We had too much of, like, backlight from over here, I think. So, alright. Since I am all set, we are going to be doing 2 today. I figure, since I usually have, like, an excerpt, or an extra one recently on, Fridays, because I've been doing an extra story series from a certain creator that I met off of Reddit. So we are, oh geez. So, he kind of has his own standalone series as well. I figured I'm just gonna go ahead and, I don't know, I'm still torn on whether or not I just want to loop his in, like keep this on here, the video of it long, and just add it in somewhere else, or just add it in on the end of this, so you guys are gonna see me set up for that as well. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and swipe over here so I can see stuff bigger in case anybody says anything. Not that anybody probably will, because nobody joins my lives anymore. I'm just ranting. Ignore me. Alright. Go ahead and get my stuff set up. Alright, and here we go. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Phoenix Reads. Today's episode is going to be a series of scary stories. That's right, it is Fright Day. And as usual, the usernames of the users whose stories we're reading will be in the description below. Please go give their story and any others that they may have written some love. Please feel free to leave a comment on their post and even tag me in the comments letting them know you heard their story here. My username for Reddit is in the description. You can even tag me in stories you'd like to hear me read. We'll get started right after this ad. I think I need to turn this down a little bit, move it closer. So hard. Why are things so hard today? Is today really going to be one of those days? It's really going to be one of those days. I mean, I guess I haven't had one of those days in a hot minute, so what else do I friggin' expect? There's too many chords. Too many flapping chords. Save. I don't even know what episode I'm on, as usual. Do I ever know what episode I'm on here? Why are you... Okay. I never can remember what episode I'm on. I don't know why I'm talking into that so much. Eight. God, 8 already. that's going. Nope. I'll put that on there. That's a good spot for that, hopefully. Hold on, I could turn the camera a little bit. Maybe. Alright. So yeah, I'm still torn on whether or not I'm going to have you guys see everything all at once, or if I'm still going to do like 2 separate. Oh. Also, for those who may not be able to tell because of the lighting, I dyed my hair. I'm super excited for it. I dyed it now, so hopefully it's one less thing I have to do right before I get married, because like I don't have enough shit to do before I get married. Taking care of my hair is just one less thing. I am so thankful that I will not have to do right now. Alright. We're going to go ahead and get started. Did I lose it? Where did it go? Okay. So, alright, I'm going to go ahead. It's this one first. Okay. Okay. Thank you guys all for listening to that ad for me. Alright, today we are going to start off with a couple of stories that actually go together. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Hold on, let me move this a little bit closer. Actually, I'm just going to up the sensitivity for you so I don't have to yell in your all's ear. But alright, we're going to go ahead and get started with the part 1 of this. My husband went missing for 2 days and now he's acting weird. I don't think that's him anymore. I am a 27-year-old man named Robert. My husband, Thomas, who is 28, recently went on a hike in the woods but didn't come back for 2 days. As I was getting ready to call the police and file a missing persons report, I was extremely relieved, crying as soon as I saw him at the door. Thomas was always very emotional. In fact, when we got married, he couldn't even make it through his wedding vows without bursting into tears of joy. But when I hugged him, he didn't even blink. I didn't blame him, though. Being in the woods for 2 days could have traumatized him. What a mistake I made. A few nights later, I heard an odd noise, like scratching. I thought it was our dog, who had been avoiding my husband for a few days, trying to get into our room. But when I opened my eyes, I saw Thomas. He was standing up, scratching at the window. "Thomas, what the hell are you doing?" I said in a half yell, half whisper. He turned to me, stopping instantly, but when I saw his eyes, I felt my blood run cold. His once dazzling green eyes were now Vanta black pits with white specks, like spider eyes. "Home," was all he said, in a voice that was so distorted and no longer his own. He got into bed and went back to sleep. But as soon as he did, I packed most of my things, mainly essentials, and left with my dog. Before we left, she started growling at my bedroom door. When we left and got into my car, I could have sworn I saw him, or it, standing at the window and watching us leave. I'm now at my sister's house, and I'm afraid to go back. I just hope it leaves us alone and doesn't come back, and that I can find my real husband. The fact that it might be a giant spider is kind of creeping me out. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna say this on the podcast. I have been going live on the TikTok while I'm recording, and then if you don't catch the live, it goes up on my YouTube channel, which is in my link tree later on. So I might say some stuff that sounds kind of weird, like what I'm about to say. But thank you for the follows. I can see them. But yes, thank you for the follows. Thank you for the likes. I really appreciate it. All right, we're going to go ahead and go on to part 2 because there is a part 2. So this is part 2 to my husband went missing for 2 days and now he's acting weird. I don't think that's him anymore. I'd been at my sister's house for 3 days, and after a lot of talking, I decided to go out and look for him. I brought my dog, Artemis, with me to help look for Thomas. Artemis has always been great at finding things, along with sensing if something was wrong. I took a deep breath, just staring into the woods. The woods where my husband's dead body could be lying, or where he could be hiding from whatever monster had replaced him. After a few moments of just staring, I eventually went in, following the trail that my husband had always taken. After an hour or so is when I heard it. Robert! Someone, or something, had whispered my name. As soon as I heard it, Artemis started growling. I pulled out my shotgun that I had brought with me and looked around, but nothing was there. I tried to keep walking the trail, but Artemis was tugging me somewhere else. I followed her, and after a while, we stopped at a large cave. I took a deep breath and walked inside. I heard whispers all around me and felt as if I was being watched, but I kept going. I shone my flashlight around the cave, and after 35 minutes, it landed on my husband. I sobbed once I saw him, running to him and hugging him tightly. He was pale and skinny, barely moving, but I knew he was alive. He looked up at me and began to cry, holding on to me weakly. When I asked him what happened, he said that he'd run into some cult-like ritual, and that was it. They had seen him, and then he blacked out. I got him back to our house with my sister's help, and everything seemed to be okay. It's been 4 years since then, and sometimes I still hear whispers. We sleep with a cross above our bed, 2 Bibles on our nightstand, and salt on our windowsill. I still don't know much about what happened, and neither does Thomas, but I'm just hoping that it'll stay normal from now on. They're still watching. I really liked that one. I liked how it kind of had a conclusion. I'm using quotes. But I liked how it had a conclusion with there being a lead to more. I think that's one of my favorite parts, is that there's a lead to more of it. All right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into our technically third story. Can I tell you my secret? I have a secret, my daughter said impishly, looking up at me with her sea-green eyes, her long, dark lashes casting a shadow over her chubby toddler cheeks. What is it, little duck? I murmured softly, while I wiped residue from a peanut butter and jelly sandwich off the corners of her mouth. I can't tell you, Mommy. You might get upset. Letting out a little chuckle, I replied, Always so sweet, my little duck. Tell me your secret. My toddler only giggled, and with the reflex skills of only a toddler, or an inebriated adult, reached with little fingers to grab her glass of milk, haphazardly knocking down whatever was in her way. We're training her to use a big girl cup. Little streams of milk flowed down her pink mouth onto her chin, gulping down the creamy liquid as if she was quenching a lifelong thirst. It's time for Little Duck's bath. No, Mommy, no! My daughter, who was just the sweetest cherub a half a second ago, yelled, suddenly turning into the most formidable banshee. Baths are boring, she wailed, her bottom lip curling. Izzy, baby, you stink. I just gave you a bath this morning, too. After Izzy's bath, a fresh set of clothes, and a small bowl of ice cream, for being a good girl, we curled up on the couch to watch her favorite movie, Lion King. My daughter's skin has been acting up the last few days, so I take care to add lotion to her on her chubby arms and legs while we watch the movie. Sidebar, I think I know where this is going, and I am so excited for ones like this. Mommy? Yes, sweetheart. The corners of her mouth turning up into a grin and her dimples deepening. I have a secret, but you don't know what it is. I laughed and said in a deep voice, I'm a mommy. I know everything. Sidebar. The amount of times I have said that as a mom. Y'all. Before she could respond, my phone went off. I grabbed it off the coffee table to check the caller ID. It was Izzy's dad. We've been separated most of Izzy's life, but it's better that way. Better for Izzy. We co-parent well and get along. It wasn't his week with her, so I was a little confused on why he was calling. Sometimes he calls to say goodnight or to ask a question about Izzy, but he usually shoots me a text before. "Hello?" I said with a tad of annoyance. I only have so much time off work, and alone time with Izzy. I know he means no harm, but I only wanted just one night interrupted with my baby. At first, I thought the signal was bad, but after a moment, I realized Pete was breathing heavy on the other side, mimicking the sound of white noise. "Jenny! Hey, Jenny!" Pete's voice was breaking before he could finish his sentence. It sounded like he was going to either dry heave or wail like Izzy when she was told about needing a bath. "Pete, are you okay?" "No, Jenny, listen. I'm not sure how to tell you this. I still can't believe it. I'm gonna be fucking sick." Anxious thoughts were racing through my mind. A high-pitched ringing started in my ears. Did something happen to one of our friends? Was Pete drinking again? Did he get a bad diagnosis from his doctor? I clutched the velvety couch cushion with whitening knuckles for support and braced myself for what was to come next. "Pete, what the hell? What's going on?" "Jenny, someone took Izzy's body from the morgue. She's gone. Izzy's gone." I hung up the phone, cutting him off mid-sentence. I looked over at my daughter and smiled. "See, baby, Mommy knows everything. Even your secret." Izzy just giggled. I wrinkled my nose. "Honey, you need another bath." I knew it. I knew that's where it was going. And I love ones like that. I love ones like that. It just, I do. I enjoy ones like, I enjoy ones that have that kind of twist to it. I knew it the second that she was talking about, like, the secret, and I'm just like, I think I know. The whole stinky, I get so excited for ones like that. Sorry. Alright, we will go on to our next one. Fake friends. I was hanging with a group of my friends. Dave, Jake, and Eric were just at my house, lounging around, when suddenly, all of our phones dinged. We were all checking when we all saw the same notification for a friend request of an obvious fake person. Jake, Eric, and I were laughing about how weird it was. Then we noticed Dave wasn't laughing or doing anything, just staring blankly at his phone. Jake snapped his fingers at him. Dave! He said. Dave looked up from his phone. "So beautiful," Dave said. "She isn't real. She is obviously a bot," I told him. Then we all got back to just lounging. That's the end of that, right? Well, it was until a week later, and it comes time to hang out again. Dave asks the group chat if he can bring somebody. He wants us to meet. I don't think much of thinking it's a new friend or something. He comes in and then introduces us to her. It was definitely the girl that friended us, except something was off with her face. It was this uncanny look to her, almost as if she was fake herself. So sidebar. I'm imagining this in my head, as hopefully anybody who's listening is. And I'm thinking back to, like, the old, like, Shane Dawson conspiracy videos where he's talking about Lil Michaela. Those who know. Those who don't, look it up. And, like, how real she looks, but also, like, just how bizarrely, like, overcorrected she looks. That's what I'm imagining right now. I don't know if that's where this is coming from, or if that's, like, the idea they were going with, but that's what I'm getting in my head. Alright. Jake, Eric, and I all look at each other. There is an awkward silence until Jake breaks it. "Hi," Jake told her. It stares at him, breathing for what seems like hours, until she finally says, "Hi," in a ghastly voice. So we put on a movie and start watching it, but I can't focus on the movie, just the way she keeps looking at us. Jake gets up off the couch. "I'm going to the bathroom," he proclaims. Eric jokingly says, "Don't fall in." I've done this before. I can't tell you how many times I've made that joke. And it's funny every time. I don't care what you say. 30 minutes go by, and we notice Jake hasn't come out yet. "You think he fell in?" I jokingly asked, again, how many times have I made that joke? And again, it's funny every time. I don't care what you say. The blood-curdling scream from inside the bathroom. The blood-curdling scream from inside the bathroom. We all jump up to see what's wrong. We see Jake and this girl next to each other. I never noticed her move at all. We get closer and we ask what's wrong. "Wrong? Nothing is wrong," says Jake. As he turns around, Jake has the same uncanny look to him. I'm terrified. "Join us, friends," Jake says as the creepiest smile forms on his face. "Join us!" he shouts, with blood coming out of his eyes, rolling down to his cheeks. They both lunge at Eric. Me and Dave ran down the hall in fear. Eric's screams echoing in the long hallway. Eventually, Dave and I hid in my bedroom closet. "What are we gonna do? How are we gonna escape?" I ask him. "Escape? Why would you want to escape, friend?" As I look at his face, it starts twisting and contortions, cold blood escaping from its warping, so tight, splashes me in the face. As I look at what used to be my friend's face, I can't help but be pulled in by him. Why would I want to escape? Woo! Sorry, I saw a comment on the post, and it says, "Why would I want friends?" I feel that. I feel that in this moment. That is... I've got friends coming in from out of town in, like, hold on, 13 days. I'm a little terrified now. Dee Heather, I love you, but I swear to God, I will shoot you. All right. This next one is going to be an addition to the last one that we read last time. That was more of the real life kind of situation type thing. I think we will have a few more of those in this episode as well. We should be able to fit them in. But yes, so this is more about that one from last week, the very last one of the main recording, not the little extra one that we're having on Fridays now, but the extra one, but the last one in the main, the main podcast. My second story of the same place. Since this is going to be a 3-part thing, I've decided to draw a map of the place for better reference. I sketched it down as I wrote this. It's Picasso style. Found in my profile, I'll post the images here. This can be used for all 3 stories. Now, as I remember this story, I want to rename this place the Devil's Pitchfork. You'll see why when I post the images that come with this set. Also, just sidebar, there are no images. I just scrolled down real quick and looked, but I felt they were pretty good at portraying everything in the last one, so I'm assuming that we'll still be able to figure everything out this time too. It was about 10 p.m., ironically, the same time as the last encounter, only this time I was walking home with a different friend. All 3 of us lived in the same apartment complex, so we hung out regularly. Everything was fine up until we got to the wooden bridge that crosses you over to the other side of the road. so you can loop back and head towards the road, or alternatively, you could go down the side of the bridge. But it was too dark for that, and we felt like walking the extra steps. As soon as we got to the highest part of the bridge, we saw two dark figures, one short and one oddly tall and slim. Sidebar, Slenderman. Sorry. I instantly got shivers. Maybe because it was unexpected to find someone out so late in the dark, or in a dark area like this one we were in. Or maybe it was my body telling me there wasn't right about that couple. Nonetheless, we both agreed to keep on walking, and as long as we could make it to the turn before them, we would be good. The tall figure. I assumed it was female due to her figure and walk style. Bluish green skin with marks like stripes, almost but barely visible. One horn-looking thing in the front top part of her head, which I initially thought was just an oddly placed ponytail. The whole time she kept her left hand on the little man's right shoulder. Little man. Short, lumberjack-looking fellow with big, long beard and hair, red in color. Medieval-style clothing is the best way I can describe his attire. Walked by rocking back and forth like old men when that knee doesn't work anymore like it used to. I noticed all of this as we got closer. What I also noticed was that they were somehow timing their walk to match ours. Or something, because after we got closer, I noticed we weren't going to make it before like we first anticipated. But I know we measured the distance right. We crossed this trail every single day. This was intentional. We weren't going to be able to make it without bumping into them. We were going to have to go straight, the longest of the 4 different directions. Perfect. But screw it, let's go. My friend was in complete agreement with my initial fears, and again agreed we couldn't make it obvious we knew something was off. Something just told me that these weren't just people taking a walk this late at night. They spoke not one single word the entire time. We know because we stayed quiet to listen. As we pressed on, I'll admit, I didn't do this out of bravery. I was more terrified of the reaction of those things would have had if we ran, than if we just passed right next to them like it was nothing. So we did. I was right. Her skin was pale and greenish. Her eyes looked like her bottom half of her eyelid had been pulled into her skull, but I only glanced for a millisecond. We walked past them. As we did, silence. We kept walking for about 5 seconds, is how long we could hold a steady pace. After that, we looked at each other, and we both understood the move. Run! Unfortunately, the part of the trail we went had only one sure way out of that we deemed the safest. That exit was about 200 feet away. The speed a good scare will give you. The whole time, me and my friends would trade first place because every time you were behind, you could feel a darkness giving chase and trying to grab you with its transparent tentacles of death. Or at least, that's what I was going through at the moment. To my glorious luck, I entered the small path to the final stretch of the exit in the second place. Whoo, baby! All I heard was, "Come back here," in a super low, growling voice, but it was coming from inside my head. I did some research post-experience. Demons and other malevolent entities are said to prefer mental or psychic communications over appearing or disturbing the outside world. I guess it's more effective for them. I don't know. But I know what I heard, and it didn't want to hug. From the outside looking in, the entire line where the trail ends has a dark, eerie tint to it. It's hard to describe, but it's just creepy. It's like it's watching us, and it's pissed. Luckily, we made it out, though. We had to walk around a few blocks to make it back home. We said our goodbyes, and I fell asleep. I was exhausted. Alright, that was the end of that one. I am going to read, there's a third part to it, and I'm going to add that one on here, and then, yeah, we'll be done with this one, it looks like. It looks like there are also some websites to it. As usual, I do always put their usernames down in there, so if you want to go check out the websites that they talk about in this third part, please feel free to go look them up and go to those websites. I don't think that I have a way to do that on here, or at least in my description anyway. My final message about this place. I didn't write this for shock value. I wrote it mostly to warn people of this area. I seldom find a place that gives me the creeps the way this place did. Even in the daytime, walking alone felt emptier than it should feel. Could be due to the elderly homes nearby? Vibes? I don't know, just a guess. Anyways, I want to take this time to not only scare people, but also highlight the happenings of this place. I became interested after the second encounter. To my surprise, there was more than one incident that occurred in that area. I will post some links to articles referencing the Devil's Pitchfork, aka an unassuming part of the trail that might come to life when you least expect it. But no, seriously. This place has something to it I just can't put my finger on. Here's some articles from around the time of my experiences that I found and read as well. It's only gotten worse. And a couple of the, that has the name of the articles. One is called Dead Body Found Along Olympia Walking Path Tuesday Night. And then the other one is Woman Attacked from Behind, Hidden Head with Baseball Bat on Hiking Trail. And yeah. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Water break. All right. And we are on to the next one. This is a doozy. This may be the last one we do in this episode. All right. A face only a mother could love. Or wait, hold on. Let me double check something real quick. I hope this doesn't exit me out of recording. Okay, good, it didn't. Yeah, we're good. A face only a mother could love. Have you ever heard the sound a scalpel makes as it slides over bone? If you haven't, it's a little like a knife scraping over a hollow rock. The bone isn't as solid as you might think, not as solid as the blade at least, and the sound has an eerie quality to it. The more I reflect on the sound, the more it reminds me of nails on a chalkboard or sidewalk chalk that kids drag over the pavement. It's a weird noise that sets your hair on edge and makes you grit your teeth against the intrusive grinding. I've had a lot of time to think about that sound in the years following my wife's death. That was the sound, though, that woke me that night. It had been a long week. The department had been reeling over a series of brutal murders, and this was the first night I had gotten to sleep in my own bed in days. I had been crashing in the break room, sleeping in my car, and living on 1 cup of coffee at a time, while we tried to track this sadist son of a bitch. I knew many cops in the same situation, but, as most of us are locals, the desire to see this guy brought to justice is palpable. The killer had been sticking to a specific area. My area, actually. He was killing with no pattern, no particular demographic, but he seems to be sticking to victims in this particular part of town. These were low to middle income families, people who couldn't just afford to up and leave because a crazy killer was on the loose, no matter how heinous the crimes were. And the crimes were absolutely heinous. 7 different victims, none of them having anything in common, had been found with their faces skinned down to the bone and removed. The whole face. It was as though someone had cut the face off, skinned it down to the skull, and took it with them when they left. Nothing was ever taken from the apartments. No messages were ever left, and the killer never lingered after doing their strange deed. We called him a killer, but the victims were usually still alive when they left. They died from the blood loss afterwards, sometimes living for hours, lying there as they watched their life leak away as they screamed wetly. The last one was a store owner, well liked in the community. The one before that was an 80-year-old grandmother. Before that, it was a 19-year-old girl who was popular with the boys in the neighborhood. A bike messenger, a beat cop, an aspiring actress, a high school student who was once a beauty queen. None of these people even knew each other. There was no connection besides where they lived, and no one could find even a single person that any of them knew in common. The only connection they all had was being well-liked. I'd been sent home that night, my captain telling me that I looked like crap and needed some sleep in a real bed. My wife had been waiting for me. Captain Wimes may have called her before I left, and the night had been a good one. She had saved me dinner, roast, and potatoes, which I like, and we had cuddled on the couch as we watched something on Netflix. As tired as I was, I remember feeling warmer just by the time I spent with her that night. When she looked up at me, her head pillowed in my lap, I remember thinking I was the luckiest guy in the world. When I fell asleep after a rather heated lovemaking session, I found myself looking forward to the next day, hopeful that we could catch this guy and get rid of some of that fear that was hanging around like a cloud. When I came awake, it was because of the scraping noise. Some nights, I wish I had just stayed asleep. I lay awake for a few seconds, listening to the scraping sound and wondering what it could be. It was an alien sound, like a nail dragged across a window. There was an underlying sound as well, a low, muffled sound that sounded like someone having a bad dream. I rolled on my side, thinking that my wife was having a bad dream and wanting to comfort her. She was prone to nightmares. Her childhood had been less than ideal, and I wanted to wrap her in a reassuring arm. I found myself unable to move, however. My whole body was heavy, my muscles unresponsive, and all I could do was lie there and listen to her soft groans and husky moans. I kept trying to move, but it was different than a bout of sleep paralysis somehow. This felt like being out of my body, unable to control it. Then my eyes tracked to the mirror that sat atop my wife's vanity, and I felt a scream hang in my throat like a piece of meat. I was choking on the scream, as my mind tried to process what I was seeing. I was dreaming. I had to be. Things like this did not exist in the real world. This was a nightmare. Maybe I was even the one making those noises I kept hearing. This simply could not be happening. I was dreaming. I was nightmaring. I would wake up, and this would all go away. The longer it went on, though, the more I concluded that it was happening. The thing reflecting in the mirror was nearly 7 feet tall. It crouched in the bedroom, leaning over my wife as it slid one long finger over her face. Its head was large, like a gray baby doll head, with a face covered by a grotesque mask that looked plastered on. There was a spread of red around the mask's corners, and it looked stretched and frayed as it lay pancaked across the creature's features. The creature's body was gray, long and disappropriately slim, on a pair of spindly legs that disappeared below the corner of the bed. What interested me most, however, were the long gray arms that ended in pointy fingers. Fingers. He was currently sliding over my wife's face. He was taking that long finger along the same track, again and again, and I could just see a trickle of blood sliding down one of her cheeks as I watched helplessly. I could see a trench working its way through her skin, the blood beginning to run more freely as he went. His eyes, his overly expressive blue eyes, followed the finger's path as he worked, and I tried with all I had to break out of whatever held me. The too big head looked up from its work, and I realized I was shaking a bit as I watched him. His hand stretched out, impossibly long, and one of those claws came to rest in my ear. It was cold and wet, like a fish that had been plucked from a stream. Suddenly, my shuddering stopped, and I realized why I couldn't move. That thing had done something to me, had done something to my wife. I was forced to lay there and watch as he went about his work. The process was not quick. Whatever tool he had at the end of his wrist must be dull indeed. He had to make the circuit for nearly an hour and a half, and my wife's muffled cries were becoming more and more piteous. The blood was really coming down now, pooling on the bed and turning the white sheets a deep red. I saw my wife starting a shudder, thinking she might come out of it. He touched her with one of those claws, though, putting the tip in her ear, and she went still again. I was going to have to watch as he took her face. At some point, I realized that. All the realizing in the world, though, wouldn't prepare me for it. Finally, after what felt like days, he pulled the finger back and bent low over her. He brought both hands up, 10 scalpel fingers, peeling the face I had loved so much from her too white skull. That's the other sound I will never forget until the day I die. The sound of my wife's face being peeled away sounds like nothing so much as Velcro separating. I saw it in the murky glass as it came free. For just an instant, I could see the creature's face too. It pulled off the old mask, and I realized too late that it was the face of the shopkeeper we had found a few days ago. It put the face into its mouth, and as it chewed, I could see a face like a swollen potato. Its mouth like a carved jack-o'-lantern sneer. Its rubbery teeth chewed at the flesh as those eyes stared blankly into space. It had a pair of way too expressive blue eyes, and for a moment I thought they might have come from a doll. They looked at me suddenly, locked mine as I stared into the mirror. Those horrible blue eyes held my gaze for a count of 20 before it slapped the new face on with a wet chuck sound. Those eyes stared back at me through the eye holes of my wife's detached face, and the creature went out through the window without a second look back. Those eyes, peeking jealousy out of my wife's face, were the worst part, and that face haunts my dreams every night. By the time I could move, she was dead. She came out of it before I did, though. She lay on the bed, gasping wetly and calling for me. I didn't know if she could see me. Did her eyes still work? She passed out a few times as she tried to turn her head, finally just laying in her own blood and calling for me softly. She wanted me to save her, wanted me to wake her up from this nightmare. She couldn't be dying in her own bed after having her face cut off. I began to get some feeling back in my arms as her voice trailed off. I could flex my fingers, but my arms didn't start to work until after she had slipped off. The light had begun to peek in by the time I could fall out of bed and scramble for the phone. I told them everything. I told them about the creature. I told them about its long claws. I told them about the paralyzing dread. I told them how it had taken my wife's face and left out the window. Their response was to send me to a therapist, to give me some time to grieve, to have my work with a hypnotherapist and try to decide if I had actually seen something. I quickly learned that they didn't want to believe that I had seen something. They wanted to believe that I had created this monster from my trauma. They wanted me to believe it too, but I wouldn't. I suffered through the bereavement period. I went to the therapists and told them what they wanted to hear. They wanted to tell me that the creature was a way for my mind to cope with what had happened. I knew better, though. I used that downtime to gain information on this creature. There wasn't much to go on. The crimes had all been committed within 2 blocks of each other, all in a central location. All in the part of town that housed several large apartment complexes. I asked around, seeing if anyone had seen anything like it, but I'd got a few answers. Some of the homeless people told me they had seen something, sulking about lately, but most of them were too strung out to be credible. A few of them led me to an abandoned underground station that had once been central to the area but now stood abandoned. The homeless didn't stay there anymore, and if they did, they stayed forever, or so they told me. After a month of bereavement, I came back with my information compiled and ready to hand to the chief, but I returned to a very different work environment. No one believed that I had seen a monster steal my wife's face. I began to hear rumbles around the station that I was a suspect now. A 15-year-old officer had just laid there and watched his wife have her face taken off? Not likely. It seemed more likely that I had been out all night and came home to find her like that. It seemed more likely still that I was the killer, banking on the idea that my reputation would put me above suspicion. I didn't care. I knew what I had seen, and I took my information straight to my boss. My boss, however, was in another camp altogether. Is this how you've spent your period of mourning? I wanted you fresh. All of this monster stuff out of your system. The others already think you're unhinged. The ones who don't think you're the killer. You need to be careful talking about this kind of crap around here. Get back to your desk. You're on light duty until further notice, and I don't want another word about this damn monster. I seethed behind my desk, already planning my next move. If it was proof that they wanted, it was proof I'd give them. I left early that afternoon and went home to prepare. I packed a bag. I took my service pistol and shotgun from the hall closet. The little pump action fit nicely into my camp sack, as well as a rope, a flashlight, and some trail bars. I dressed warmly. The November weather was already becoming frigid after dark, and I looked back at my apartment before leaving, unsure if I'd ever see it again. A glance at my wife's portrait on the mantel, though, was enough to send me on my way. This creature wouldn't be wearing her face for long. The old underground was a dilapidated relic, a toothless mount that gaped out of the pavement. The gate was locked, but I had been told the fence was cut around the back. Some industrious vag had made a neat little hole to scurry through, and I entered the perimeter without much fuss. The sun had begun to set as I flipped on the flashlight, and it cast a red glow across the grimy tiles. The glow was gone after the second staircase, and I was plunged into true darkness. The outside had looked bad, but the inside was a ruin. The tiles had been shattered in places, light fixtures hanging from a leaking roof, and a single train stood like a hulk on dead tracks. There was a constant sound of dripping water, a constant sound of scurrying feet, and it was easy to imagine that was what Bilbo Baggins had found under the Goblin Mountain. I found myself swinging my flashlight about at every sound, my years of cool police training melting away as I descended into the station. Near the tracks, I found a handprint that looked red with dried blood. I jumped down onto the tracks without a second thought, drawing my gun and looking right and left. My light fell across a fainter smear going left, light red staining the side of the train, and I decided this was my direction. I moved quietly, not wanting to tip my prey off. He could have been hanging over my head, and I'd have never seen him. If he lived here, he could probably see in the dark, and bringing a beacon with me would have been as good as screaming down the tunnels. As I moved, I had little doubt that I knew he was here, or that he knew I was here. The deeper in I went, the worse the scuttling and the skittering became. I told myself it was rats. But how sure of that was I? How sure was I that the scrambling I heard wasn't the sound of those sharp fingers scampering across the ceiling? How sure was I that the scrambling was the sound of his equally long toes I had never seen, gripping the pavement and moving his body along in a quiet scuttle? As I took another corner, I could swear that something big moved just out of my flashlight beam. I held it there for a count of 12 before turning away and continuing down the tunnel. The blood smears were all but gone, but I felt drawn deeper in as I took turns at random. It was almost as if I could hear my wife's voice calling me, and I had little doubt that he knew I was here now. I had even less doubt when he fell onto my back, slamming my head against the floor and sending my gun spinning out of my hand. I blacked out, and when I came to, I wish I had died. I was laid across a metal bench somewhere deep in the tunnels. An eerie light lit the space, some kind of plant life maybe, and I found I was paralyzed again. That was when my wife's face, a face made terrible by those two expressive eyes, loomed over me, and I'd have cringed away if I were not held by whatever power the creature had. It studied me. Maybe it even recognized me. But its regard was terrible as it came from a face I loved so much. Her face was decomposed, rotting away as it clung to the creature's skull, and I felt something goopy fall onto my cheek as it leaned in close to inspect me. I had only thought it couldn't get any worse. That was when he pressed that finger to the cleft of my chin. He began to circle, the claw digging against my skin as he slid the nail around and around and around my face. It didn't hurt at first. At first, it was a little more than a discomfort, and I began to wonder how long he had been carving at my wife. I stared at him, and he stared back, those baby blues boring into me. His eyes were mesmerizing, terrifying as they held unwaveringly still. As the minutes stretched into hours, I began to feel my face heating up. It was subtle at first, just a little warmth around my chin and forehead. But as the circling finger went around and round, I felt like someone was holding a lighter to my skin. I would have screamed, my flesh becoming seared, but I couldn't move, and my horror was trapped in my throat again. I started to feel the blood as it slid down my cheeks. First, it was just a trickle, a damp line or two, but soon it ran in rivulets. Soon I could feel my flesh parting from my skull. Soon I could feel that sizzling heat as it cut my skin, and I felt as though I must pass out. I must black out from shock. There was no way that everyone was awake as he cut their living face from their body. It was impossible. It was sick. It was... He pulled the finger back, suddenly, and I realized with real horror what was about to happen. All 10 fingers gripped my flesh, and I tried to pull away. Maybe I could still make it to a hospital. They could fix me. They could make this right. There was no way he was going to take my face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. It wasn't supposed to. He gripped my face, and I heard that same Velcro ripping as my own face came free of my skull. Then he devoured my wife's face as I watched and slapped my own across the gore-soaked canvas that was his lumpy head. He hooted then, hooted and cried in his strange, unknowable language. He turned into the deeper tunnel and cried out in pure pleasure as he fulfilled whatever ritual he was performing, whatever dark spell he needed these faces for. I hoped he would let me go now. I had lost a lot of blood, but maybe I could still get some medical attention. I felt groggy, weak, but when I heard something struggling out of the depths of the tunnel, I felt something heavy settle into my guts. What fresh hell was this? Out of the darkness, lit only by whatever phosphorescence dwelt down here, came a hulking thing that slid on long, gray limbs. It was spider-like, a massive gray blob that pulled itself along on something like tentacles, each of them ending in the same hooked fingers as the creature. It lowered its equally mushy face to the creature, taking in the face, and I heard something speak in a voice made of broken glass. "Does it please, oo mother? Do I please, oo mother?" it cried, and that voice was full of hope and terrible longing. The gray creature seemed to contemplate for a moment before it opened its shapeless mouth and whispered a single horrible word in a language like snakes crawling across a naked face. Ugly. Then it pulled itself back into the depths, and I heard the creature sobbing as it fell to its gray knees and wept. Then suddenly I was running. My mind had set itself into autopilot, and my body and mind simply couldn't take it anymore. My mind had set it, myself pushed against this thing and its terrible need, and my body propelled itself away before its knowledge could do my brain lasting harm. I ran and ran, blind in that lightless world, as the blood trickled down my naked face. If the creature came after me, I never knew. If the thing that wore my face came after me, I never knew. I was running one second, the darkness pressing in all around me, and the next, my world was full of light, and I was falling into oblivion. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital, being told how lucky I was to be alive. An undercover cop had followed me to the underground entrance and had waited to question me when I came back out. When I didn't come out for several hours, he called in people to look for me. Those people had heard me screaming through the tunnels, caught sight of my faceless form in their flashlights, and caught me just before I fell. I had nearly died on the way there. I had simply lost too much blood from my body and was in some kind of shock. They had sedated me, my night terrors causing me to buck and scream, and I had spent nearly a week in a hospital bed. No one thinks I'm crazy anymore, and no one thinks I'm the killer. Certainly no one believes that I cut my own damn face off. I'm writing this as a warning to anyone living in the area. Get out. Leave your home and get out. This creature has no rhyme or reason for his actions. He seeks only to gain something that I believe he will never find. I'm safe now, a faceless horror who will have to live with the knowledge I discovered until the day I die. But you needn't suffer from my fate. Get away from the cheap side, get away from the concrete apartments, and get as far away from the city as you can, lest yourself be one more face for this monster to show its mother. Ooh, we've read this person's stories before, and every single time, it's just, they are so well done. They are definitely one of my favorites. But, alright, I'm running out of time, so to the outro we go. Thank you everyone for listening today. I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. If you know someone who likes my content, feel free to send me their way in a share. If you would like to send me a message with your own story, rant, question, unpopular opinion, or if you want me to tell others how you fucked up today, or any day, just send me a message via any of my social media found in the description. Just look for my cute little avatar you see on whatever app you're listening on. Please, give a rating if you enjoyed what you heard today. I hear they help out tremendously. And, as always, I will catch y'all next time. Bye! Thank you guys online for listening and sticking around. For those that did, thank you for the likes. Sorry, it's hard to do both things at a time. What episode did we say we were on again? I don't remember. I know I said it earlier on, and I'm just completely forgot already. 8. God, I can't believe we're already to episode 8. I will do... the details and everything later. And this is the one that is coming out this coming Friday. I can't find what I'm looking for. Alright, I will do everything else later. Oh, there we go. I was like, how do I do this? All right, and I do think I am going to go ahead and just do all of this in one. Or, yeah, we'll go ahead and start the next one and just, I'll have it all on YouTube after we're done here. All right. So again, we're going to do the whole intro and everything like that, just like what we did before. And then we will do the excerpt for, that's technically the extra episode that comes out on Fridays. But for you guys that are watching one live and then later on YouTube, it'll be just all in one video. So this will just be an extra long video for you guys. After I clean my eyes out. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Phoenix Reads. Today's episode is a series of, it's going to be our extra Fright Day episode that we are continuing in the little series. I don't really have a name for this series, so if anybody does have a suggestion, feel free to leave the suggestion below. I will gladly love to give this little extra excerpt series a name. As usual, the username of the user whose story we're reading will be down in the description below. Feel free to go check out the other stories that he has done or that they have done. I don't really know their gender. They're really good. They are all so good. If you want to read ahead, go. I know they have like 7 out right now of this series. We're working on the second one today. You can also tag me in a post or in a comment and let them know that you heard their story on my podcast. My username for Reddit is in the description, and you can even tag me in stories you'd like to hear me read. We will get started right after this ad. Oh no. No, 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 no. I accidentally added it to the one I was just doing. And I have to wait till it fucking... I don't know how to remove it. Here we go. I might have to redo. I might have to redo my intro though. Maybe. No, there it is. Okay. I thought I screwed up royally for a second there. Thankfully, I did not. Alright, so we can come over here. Thank you all for listening to the ad. Those online, you will not hear an ad. Unfortunately, I have no way to connect YouTube to my podcast stuff. At least not that I know of right now. I might have to look into it to see if there is a way, but as far as I know, there isn't. So we're gonna get on to our second story in our series of so far 7 stories. I think they're working on an 8th as well, but I won't know. I probably should keep an eye out for it, but I need to go look. But this one is called Yowls at Sunset. Grandpa and I were out on the back porch, spending our evenings as we often did, when I asked him about a weird story my parents had used to scare me as a kid. It was some kind of monster cat that would eat me if I was bad, I said, swirling my beer around thoughtfully as I tried to remember what it was called. I used to live in fear of it, since Mom said it would eat me if I didn't finish my chores. It was the whooping cat, the Wamping Cat? The Wampus Cat, my grandpa said, draining his beer and launching it into the tree line like he often did. That's the one. I hadn't thought about him in years until last night. I dreamed that I was small again, wandering around your house and looking for people. I never really saw him, but out of the corner of my eye, I could see this big, shadowy creature stalking me. He kind of reminded me of one of those guys in a mascot costume. I never got a good look at it. It was always hiding, but I remember being pretty scared as he followed me around the house. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. Now I lost my spot. He made this kind of sound, like a house cat, but loud and long, like a cat that's been startled or is about to fight. Suddenly, Grandpa loosed a cry like a scalded cat, and I heard all the animal noise around us taper off. He looked back at me and said, "Did it sound like that?" I was speechless. Yeah, exactly like that, but how? I taught your mother how to recognize that call. I didn't want her to go through the same horrific experience I had. Experience what exactly? I asked, slightly confused. The Wampus Cat. I stared at him for a moment. The night birds starting to tune up again as Grandpa leaned back and stared at the night sky. We were silent for a few minutes, the crickets loud as they put on the last concert before autumn put them to the ground, before Grandpa said, "I saw him once." My head was a little foggy, and I mumbled out, "Saw what?" "The Wampus Cat. I saw him once." My skepticism started to claw its way out, but ever since the tree incident, I had been a little more open to Grandpa's stories. Yeah? Mind telling me about it? Grandpa seemed to think about it for a second before he began. I was about 5 or 6 when Cousin Luke came to stay for a week. My mother's sister was going to stay with Luke's sister to help her deliver her first baby, and she asked if Luke could stay for a while. Mama said he'd be staying in my room with me, and even though I said I didn't mind, I wasn't very excited by the prospect of Luke staying with us. Luke was not a good kid, you see. Luke was the baby in his family. 2 older brothers and a sister who were all out of the house, and this had led him to be a bit of a brat. He was also a bully, and I knew I would have to keep an eye on my things if I didn't want them to go missing. I would also have to make sure to spend as much time in the woods as I could when I wasn't at school. Otherwise, Luke would likely make excuses to play rough with me. I wasn't a fragile child, but Luke was a few years older than me and had often left bruises after we played. So Luke came over, bag packed for a week or more, and Aunt Cara thanked us for letting him stay. Despite her difficult son, Aunt Cara was an absolute delight, and I didn't hold it against her that I would have to deal with Luke for the foreseeable future. She gave me a tight hug, thanking me for taking Luke into my room and promising me something special when she came back. I thanked her, but I was thinking that the only gift I was looking forward to was the return of my room and my quiet existence. I showed Luke to our room, showing him the cot that he would be sleeping on, and turned to find him putting his bag at the foot of my bed. When I asked him what he was doing, he just grinned like a fox and waggled a finger at me. Not very Christian of you to make the guest sleep on a saggy old cot. A real guest would be offered the bed while you sleep on the cot, don't you think? I wanted to argue with him, but I realized it wouldn't do any good. As I tried to get comfortable on the couch that night, listening to Luke snore lustily in my bed, I knew it was going to be a long few weeks. I'm going to pause real quick. I need to plug my phone in here. I should be good. Okay. Well, now I stopped this for no reason, so... However, after a week of having Luke there, I was good and ready to have him gone. In that time, he had managed to sprain my wrist after pushing me out of a tree, steal my favorite rock from my collection, though he claimed it hadn't been him, and break any number of the small number of toys I owned. To my parents, he was an angel. Always minding his manners around my mother, and especially around my strict father. He always appeared to help with chores, walked with me to school, and was polite while they were around. The second their backs were turned, he cut school, shirked chores, and mocked these bumpkins to their backs. It was Sunday, when our neighbor knocked at the door. It was working towards mid-afternoon, the sun taking on that golden tint that you see when it's getting ready to set when the knock came. Hard and frantic. Daddy went to get it, and it turned out to be Mrs. Douglas, our second closest neighbor. She had run nearly 6 miles to our house to help get Mr. Douglas to the hospital. He had fallen off a ladder while fixing something and broken his leg pretty badly. She had managed to get him onto the porch, but she couldn't drive him there herself since they didn't own a car. This was the 1930s, so that wasn't uncommon. and my parents agreed to go help her. Mama told us to stay here while she went and helped Daddy, telling us to tidy up while they were gone. I asked Mama if I could go with them, saying I wanted to help, but really just not wanting to be left alone with Luke. Mama smiled and ruffled my hair, thinking I was just trying to avoid cleaning, and told me that I had to stay here and watch the house while they were gone. Besides, you don't want the Wampus Cat to hear that you're shirking your responsibilities, right? That sent a chill up my spine. Much like you, I was pretty scared of the Wampus Cat, not just because my mama talked about it, but because my grandma talked about it. Grandma used to say that the Wampus Cat came to get little kids who disobeyed their parents, dragging them off into the woods and devouring them in their lair. He roamed the woods, listened for misbehaving children, and took care of them so their parents no longer had to be burdened with them. He has coal black fur and coal red eyes. He's as tall as a man and as wide as a bear. He has razor sharp teeth that seem too big for his mouth and claws like kitchen knives. You'll know him by his cry, a sound like a cat scalded by the stove and the smell of fresh blood. Nothing will stop him from getting his prey. Nothing, and you don't want to be the focus of his ire. When Grandma told me to beware of something, I bewared it. So, as the old truck rumbled out of the front yard, I set about the chores. There were dishes to wash, there were floors to sweep, there were counters to clean, and there was washing to bring in as well. As I started wiping the counters, I heard Luke snort, continuing to throw the baseball he had been playing with up into the air before catching it. He hadn't gotten up off the couch and was sitting with his head nearer to the ground and his feet on the back, something Mama had asked him not to do. "You still believe in that old cat?" I looked up, confused by the question. Of course, Mama wouldn't lie about something like that. Don't you? Nah, I figured it out a while ago that the Wampus Cat was made up. Have you ever seen a cat that big? It's all nonsense. I tried to rationalize this. The cleaning cloth still held in my hand. That couldn't be right. My mama had never lied to me, and my grandma had certainly never lied to me. My mama might tease me sometimes, but she always told me it was a joke afterwards. My grandma, though, did not joke. My grandma, though, did not joke about the strange things that might be found in the Appalachians. This would muddy the waters and might cause me to question something that would get me killed. As Luke played with his ball, I continued to clean and finish my chores. As I cleaned, I began to feel like something was watching me. It began as a tickle on the back of my neck, that feeling that I wasn't quite alone. As I washed dishes, I could almost feel a presence looming just out of sight. Its hulking form seen out of the corner of my eye. It seemed to linger near the windows, its bulk sometimes blocking out the light. I felt my eyes creeping over to have a look, but I remembered what my grandma said and kept my eyes forward away from the windows. If you ever feel something watching you, it's best to just ignore it. Some critters really don't like being seen, and seeing them could be the last thing you ever see. I finished the dishes as the sun began to sink towards the end of the horizon. I could feel those eyes behind me, could feel them boring me, and I didn't want to look at whatever possessed those eyes. It seemed intent on me, showing no attention to my cousin in the living. I had to finish cleaning. Mama would be mad if I didn't. I turned around, my legs wooden pegs beneath me, and my feet, and felt my breath stick in my throat as I saw him. I only saw him for a second, but that was a second too long. He loomed in the window near the mudroom, his bulk making the setting sun appear muted. His fur was coal black, looking matted and tangled as the burdocks stood out against the glass. His eyes were living coals, seeming to simmer in his head as he stared at me. His claws tapped lightly against the window, those long yellow talons that sprouted from his furry hands. His teeth were too big for his mouth, and they poked out haphazardly from a heaving mouth that fogged the glass with every breath. He moved away after a few seconds, pushing his bulk out of the windowsill, but it had been long enough to etch his image into my memory. I felt the hardwood of the cabinet as it ground into my back. I sat down hard on my backside, my eyes glued to the window as they bulged in fear. The window was empty now, but I could still see the remains of his final gasping breath. I could still see his face if I closed my eyes, and those claws would haunt my dreams for many nights to come. I was shaking as I watched the window, seeing his shadow as it slid across the porch, his weight making the boards groan and the slat. "What are you doing?" I looked over, seeing Luke standing there with a questioning look spread across his face. I pointed shakily to the door, my voice refusing to come out. "Oh, what? Is it the great Wampus Cat waiting for me?" I nodded furiously, pointing at the window. Luke moved to the window, looking out onto the porch and snorting at me. He said he didn't see anything out there, and moved to the door to open it. I cried out, not making any intelligible sound, not wanting him to let it in. I sounded like a dog, strangling on a bit of something, unable to draw in breath. He unlocked the door and turned the handle, pulling the door as if in slow motion. I screamed internally as the door swung open, my throat holding it all in till I felt like I might burst. He stepped out onto the porch, looking around the door before turning back to grin at me. "Well, either he's great at hiding or he ain't here. Almost seems like he's made up. I told you there was no Wampus Cat. Nothing to punish naughty kids. Your mama lied, just like mine, and if there is nothing that can do anything about..." The shadow fell across him. My attention had been drawn away as he spoke, but it snapped back to the large black silhouette behind him as the doorway was engulfed. Luke still stood, grinning in victory, but his smile dribbled off his face as he took notice of the shadow that fell across the floor. He turned his head, ever so slightly, but I don't think he ever even saw the Wampus Cat. The creature wrapped its thick, furry arms around him, lifting him easily into that gaping maw of razor-sharp piano keys. Luke screamed as his head slid into that toothy mouth, and he went on screaming until the Wampus Cat crunched down and ended his life. He stared at me as he stood there, Luke's body hanging in his arms before he turned and took his grisly supper back to the sea of green. He left me sitting there, shaking and shivering as I waited for my body to work again. I sat there speechless as my grandpa finished his story. The night sounds were all around us again, the birds and bugs tuning up again as Grandpa took a sip from his nearly forgotten beer. His throat had been getting rough towards the end, and the beer seemed to wet it like a dry valley in a rainstorm. He finished the beer in one long pull and launched the bottle into the woods where it shattered against a tree. "So what happened when they got home? Surely they didn't believe that a big cat came and ate your cousin?" He stared into the dark, his face that of a child who's been scarred into silence. He was quiet for so long that I thought he had fallen asleep, and I snapped my fingers in front of his face a few times to see if he was dozing. He snapped awake after a few seconds of this, blinking and looking around as the fear slid away. Even so, it was several minutes before he finally spoke. "Well, as it usually happened, my grandma came to save me. Not from the Wampus Cat, he only took naughty children. She came to save me from my terror. She came and found me shaking like a leaf, the door still open, and the sun sinking low in the sky. She took me to her house and wrapped me in a quilt. I sat there for hours, my mind throbbing under the weight of all that fear. It isn't every day you see the focus of your fear made flesh, and I spent a few days at my grandmother's house as my mind tried to make sense of it all. My mother came in a panic after finding Luke and me missing, and when Grandma told her what had happened, She tried to push her away to me immediately. Grandma held her back, though, telling her to be patient with me. He's been through a lot, Parson. Give him time and let him rest. He's seen the Wampus Cat and lived to tell the tale. Not many can say that. I sat in that shaking stupor for quite some time before I was able to gain control of myself again. Aunt Cara came to see Grandma too, and I heard her crying. She cried, she wailed as I shivered beneath my blankets, but she never told. I never saw her again. She seemed to have lost her taste for the Appalachians. I went back home, and I learned to live with the knowledge that there were things out there that could kill me. Things that played by their own rules. This was my first taste of the strangeness of my home, and I never forgot it. Somewhere in the wood, a cat yowled, and I shuddered to my core. I knew it was nothing but a mountain bobcat, but it was still too close to the cry my mother had always made for my taste. I got up then, taking my own bottle to the garbage, as I went back inside. Grandpa asked me where I was going before I walked inside, and it took me a few seconds before I could answer him. I forgot to take out the garbage earlier. Don't want some damn cat thinking I'm shirking my house chores. My grandpa's laughter followed me into the house. I love these ones. These ones are so much fun. I love that it's always around the grandpa and I think the grandson, or at least the grandkid. I love just the visuals that come across. Because, like, I can imagine, like, some big, like, almost like Halloween-looking cat, but a little bit more terrifying. So yeah, I very much enjoy these, and I hope you guys all enjoy them too. I know they're just like a little, like, under like 15-20 minute excerpts, but they're so well written that I feel like they deserve their own little series. And instead of like putting like multiple ones in an episode, just doing like one at a time, I feel like it kind of like sets a pace. And so I hope you guys all like it too. Thank you to everyone for listening today. I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. If you know someone who likes my content, feel free to send me their way in a share. If you would like to send me a message with your own story, rant, question, unpopular opinion, or want me to tell others how you fucked up today, or any day, send me a message via any of my social media found in the description. Just look for my cute little avatar you see on whatever app you're listening on. Please, give a rating if you enjoyed what you heard today. I hear that they help out tremendously. And as always, I will catch y'all next time. Bye! Oh, shit. I'm dropping stuff. Alright, and I will see you guys all next time. I probably will not be going live again until next week. I only do the 3 episodes a week, and I did 2 yesterday, which will come out on YouTube and on my podcast for you guys, Monday and Wednesday as always. And then this episode that we're doing right now will come out this coming Friday. So yeah, I will see you guys all next time. Bye!